Welcome back to Mr. Schaefer Reads. The barbarians are saying, where are stories? You don't read us a story, we're going to pillage this village. Make it snappy there, Mr. Schaefer. Read to us. And so I will. Today I'm going to read to you The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen, 1837. Turn on your closed captions and read along with me. Far out in the ocean, the water is as blue as the petals of the loveliest cornflower and as clear as the purest glass. But it is very deep too. It goes down deeper than any anchor rope will go, and many, many steeples would have to be stacked one on top of another to reach from the bottom to the surface of the sea. It is down there that the sea folk live. People like you and me, only from the sea. Now, don't suppose that there are only bare white sands at the bottom of the sea. No, indeed. The most marvelous trees and flowers grow down there, such pliant stalks and leaves that the least stir in the water makes them move about as though they were alive. All sorts of fish, large and small, dart among the branches, just as birds flit through the trees up here. From the deepest spot in the ocean rises the palace of the Sea King. Its walls are made of coral and its high-pointed windows of the clearest amber, but the roof is made of mussel shells that open and shut with the tide. This is a wonderful sight to see, for every shell holds glistening pearls, any one of which would be the pride of a queen's crown. The Sea King down there had been a widower for years, and his old mother kept house for him. She was a clever woman, but very proud of her noble birth. Therefore, she flaunted 12 oysters on her tail, while the other ladies of the court were only allowed to wear 6. Except for this, she was an altogether praiseworthy person, particularly so because she was extremely fond of her granddaughters, the little sea princesses. They were 6 lovely girls, but the youngest was the most beautiful of them all. Her skin was as soft and tender as a rose petal, and her eyes were as blue as the deep sea. But, like all the others, she had no feet. Her body ended in a fishtail. The whole day long they used to play in the palace, down in the great halls where live flowers grew on the wall. Whenever the high amber windows were thrown open, the fish would swim in, just as swallows dart into our rooms when they are open when we open the window. But these fish now would swim right up to the little princesses and eat out of their hands and let themselves be petted. Outside the palace was a big garden with flaming red and deep blue trees. Their fruit glittered like gold and their blossoms flamed like fire on their constantly waving stalks. The soil was very fine sand indeed, but as blue as burning brimstone. A strange blue veil lay over everything down there. You would have thought yourself aloft in the air with only the blue sky above and beneath you, rather than down at the bottom of the sea. When there was a dead calm, you could see just the sun, like a scarlet flower with light streaming from its calyx. Each little princess had her own small garden plot, where she could dig and plant whatever she liked. One of them made her own little flower bed in the shape of a whale. Another thought it neater to shape hers like a little mermaid, but the youngest of them made hers as round as the sun, and there she grew only flowers that were as red as the sun itself. She was an unusual child, quiet and wistful, and when her sisters decorated the garden with all kinds of odd things they found in sunken ships, she would allow nothing in hers except flowers as red as the sun, and a pretty marble statue. This figure of a handsome boy, carved in pure white marble, had sunk down to the bottom of the sea from some ship that was wrecked. Besides the statue, she planted a rose-colored weeping willow tree, which thrived so well that its graceful branches shaded the statue and hung down to the blue sand, where their shadows took on a violet tint, and swayed as the branches swayed. It looked as if the roots and the tips of the branches were kissing each other in play. Nothing gave the youngest princess such pleasure as to hear about the world of human beings above them. Her old grandmother had to tell her all she knew about ships and cities and of people and animals. What seemed nicest of all to her was that up on land the flowers were fragrant, for those at the bottom of the sea had no scent. And she thought it was nice that the woods were green, and that the fish you saw among their branches could sing so loud and sweet that it was delightful to hear them. Her grandma had to call the little birds fish, or the princess would not have known what she was talking about, for she had never seen a bird. "When you get to be 15, her grandmother said, "you will be allowed to rise up out of the ocean and sit on the rocks in the moonlight to watch the great ships sailing by. You will see woods and towns too." Next year, one of the sisters would be 15. But the others, well, since each was a whole year older than the next, the youngest still had 5 long years to wait until she could rise up from the water and see what our world was like. But each sister promised to tell the others about all that she saw and what she found most marvelous on her first day. Their grandmother had not told them half enough, and there were so many things that they longed to know about. The most eager of them was the youngest, the very one who was so quiet and wistful. Many a night she stood by her open window and looked up through the dark blue water where the fish waved their fins and tails. She could see just the moon and the stars. To be sure, their light was quite dim, but looked at through the water, they seemed much bigger than they appear to us. Whenever a cloud-like shape swept across them, she knew that it was either a whale swimming overhead or a ship many human beings were aboard on. Little did they dream that a pretty young mermaid was down below, stretching her white arms up to the keel of their ship. The eldest princess had her 15th birthday, so now she received permission to rise up out of the water. When she got back, she had 100 things to tell her sisters about. But the most marvelous thing of all, she said, was to lie down on a sandbar in the moonlight when the sea was calm and to gaze at the large city on the shore where the lights twinkled like hundreds of stars, to listen to music, to hear the chatter and clamor of carriages and people, to see so many churches, see so many towers, so many spires, and to hear the ringing bells. Because she could not enter the city, that was just what she most dearly longed to do. Oh, how intently the youngest sister listened. After this, whenever she stood at her open window at night and looked up through the dark blue waters, she thought of that great city with all of its clatter and clamor, and even fancied that in the depths she could hear the church bells ring. The next year, her second sister had permission to rise to the surface and to swim wherever she pleased. She came up just at sunset and said that the spectacle was the most marvelous sight she had seen. The heavens had a golden glow, and as for the clouds, she could not find words to describe their beauty. Splashed with red and tinted with violet, they sailed over her head. But much faster than the sailing clouds were wild swans in a flock. Like a long white veil trailing behind the sea, they flew toward the setting sun. She too swam toward it, but down it went, and all the rose-colored glow faded from the sea and sky. The following year, her third sister ascended, and as she was the boldest of them all, she swam up a broad river that flowed into the ocean. She saw glorious green, vine-colored hills. Palaces and manor houses could be glimpsed through the splendid woods. She heard all the birds sing, and the sun shone so brightly that often she had to dive under the water to cool her burning face. In a small cove, she found a whole school of mortal children paddling about in the water. She wanted to play with them, but they took fright and ran away. Then along came a little black animal. It was a dog, but she had never seen a dog before. It barked at her so ferociously that she took fright herself and fled to the open sea. But never could she forget that splendid woods, those green hills, and the nice children who would swim in the water. although they didn't have fishtails. The fourth sister was not so venturesome. She stayed far out among the rough waves, which she said was a marvelous place. You could see all around you for miles and miles, and the heavens above you were like a vast dome of glass. She had seen ships, but they were so far away that they almost looked like seagulls. Playful dolphins turned somersaults, and monstrous whales had spouted water through their nostrils, so that it looked as if hundreds of fountains were playing all around them. Now the fifth sister had her turn. Her birthday came in wintertime, so she saw things that none of the others had seen. The sea was a deep green color, and enormous icebergs drifted about. Each one glistened like a pearl, she said, but they were more lofty than any church steeple built by man. They assumed the most fantastic shapes and sparkled like diamonds. She had seated herself on the largest one, and all the ships that came sailing by sped away as soon as the frightened sailors saw her sitting there with her long hair blowing in the wind. In the late evening, clouds filled the sky. Thunder cracked, and lightning darted across the heavens. Black waves lifted those great bergs of ice on high, where they flashed when the lightning struck. On all the ships the sails were reefed, and there was fear and trembling. But quietly she sat there upon her drifting iceberg and watched the blue forked lightning strike the sea. Each of the sisters took delight. Oh, it says recording will soon stop. Go to device to free up storage. We're going to have to pause there. Tune in next time to hear the rest of The Little Mermaid.